G'day and welcome to the Ball Boys AFL Fantasy Podcast. Today we are reviewing round 13, the second of the bye rounds, talking bogs and flogs, trade targets. We're even going to be doing a rolling 22 today. Let's go!
Just done it from nowhere. Hoisted the goal from inside the 10. Sheed from the boundary. Dusty. Now Petty. Petrarca. Oh, wow. How good is that? The legend becomes immortal.
G'day and welcome again to the Ball Boys AFL Fantasy Podcast. I'm your host, Mitch Casey, and you can find me on Twitter at Ball Boys Fantasy. Joined as always by the great man himself, Luke Rogerson, coming up in the rankings. How are you, mate?
On the move, mate. I'm on the
move.
These buy round things, easy as.
Oh,
What's
piece of cake so far.
It helps when you have some nice trade-ins, but there was some good scoring this week all round, wasn't there?
Yeah, it was almost too good because some good scores might have been dropped off, and we all had lots of players playing in round 13, which was always dubbed as the easy buy round, with obviously only two teams on the bye and two teams without too many relevant players on there at that. But it is still a good reflection of, I guess, the upper echelon of your team and how they are stacking up against the rest of the comp.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited to see how it all plays out. Should we review the round with some bogs and flogs?
Yeah, let's get stuck straight into it.
And the winner of the Norm Smith medal.
You're an embarrassment to what you do, mate. You're an embarrassment.
It's been a long round, so we've got to cast our minds all the way back to Thursday night, recording straight after the Collingwood Demons game tonight on a Monday night. But Thursday night, Sydney versus St Kilda. Who was our best on ground for that game, Luke?
I didn't go with the low-hanging fruit and just pick the top scorer, but a fella that a few people might have bought in on that Thursday night, and it would have been nervous times bringing in a rookie, 200k rookie.
High break even.
And Sheldrick.
Yeah.
For owners, performed really well. I think he ended up with just shy of 80.
79, I think.
And although you won't see the cash rise straight away.
He'll go up a little bit.
Yeah, it's when you bring in a 200k, it can be disastrous because if they play shit and then they get dropped the next week, you're in strife. So I think they would have been happy to see that.
I think, they're the positive thing. It looked like he played well enough to hold his spot, at least give himself another week or two in there. So
he might make the Ball Boys trade targets this week.
A little bit of a target for some cash. So yeah, I think that's a very deserving best on ground. My flog for this game was Jakey Lloyd, who
he's your mate from last year.
Yeah, well, I did have him for a bit last year, but a lot of people would keen on trading him in this week. Obviously had the prime matchup, this is what really lends itself to the flog award here. Had the matchup against St Kilda and goes out and scores a 77 for one of his worst scores for the year.
Did he save that late as well?
He did. I think he was playing a little bit of wing, which was a bit strange, half back, but then obviously the Lizard went down and he had to go back and do a bit more stuff in the back 50. But yeah, 77 actually is his third lowest score for the whole season. So in a matchup which some owners were putting the VC on him, all sorts of things going on.
That?
Yeah, there's a few people calling for the VC, Jake Lloyd, but yeah, very disappointing for those who traded him in, hoping to get that instant reward, the sugar hit, and obviously he did do the opposite of that. So
now we turn our attention then to Friday night with Port and the Bulldogs. And just quietly, I'm loving watching Port Adelaide these days.
Yeah, I was never, not that I don't dislike Port Adelaide, but they've never been like a super exciting team for me in years past. But
in terms of fantasy relevance.
Yeah, fantasy relevance, but also just, I don't know, their style of play was a bit, I don't know.
They're a forward half, lock it in kind of
thing. Yeah. But yeah, now these days, they are fun, that midfield.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And that kind of brings us to our bog. So I've got Butters there. But the other person that I've got in there is Jack McRae.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
2 weeks in a row now, he's gone big. What were his CBA numbers?
Exactly one CBA.
See,
so
this is the thing. Is like he's forward DPP now.
Yep.
And if he's doing that, he's going to be a top 6 averaging forward for the rest of the year. So
yeah, so he's coming in with a bit of form. I think 3 tons on the trot in these last few weeks. Ever since he's gotten that forward status, he's looked pretty good. The role is still not really what we want, but it is Jack McRae. He's got the pedigree there, so definitely one to keep an eye on.
Definitely an interesting one.
Scoring regardless. The flog for this one here is everyone's VC and some people's captain going
Bales.
into the round. Shout out to you, Bales. I know I was thinking of you when in that first quarter. It was a rough watch. But Tim English, his worst score for the year by a long way, 74 points?
And
Or 76 points
against the team that allows the most points to ruckman. Am I right?
Yeah, I think it's either them or the Eagles. It might be the Eagles now, but I think they were pretty close.
Yeah.
And last time he played against Port Adelaide, went 120 in the wet. This time just just kind of sucked. His first quarter had 2 points at quarter time.
I'm glad I wasn't watching that, eh?
Yeah.
That's one of those anomalies, but you can't,
Yeah.
you do all your research into your VC, into your captain, and you can't account for that kind of, yeah.
And these are the examples as to why I say I don't like to get cute with my VC, because if you're a person like Bales, unfortunately, sorry, Bales, we're using your name a lot, but you weren't the only one, I'm sure, doing this, but you're going the Errol Goulden VC into a Tim English, which is probably the situation where English might have ended up as your captain. It all sounds great, because Errol Goulden's got that high ceiling. But if you're just going to put together your captains and your best available options, like Tim Taranto should have been thereabouts at the top for most weeks.
Leave the C on Tim Taranto and just close your eyes.
Yeah, well, there's been a bit of discussion on that recently, but we'll talk a bit more about that on Friday. But I think, to me, this just reiterates the point of not getting too cute with your captains and vice captains, because you can get stung with anomalies like this. And this is the thing, I wonder if we're all going to be nervous to put him as a captain next week, because obviously he's coming off the back of a poor score, but he's still Tim English.
What does that mean? You're a captain expert now too, mate. One shout out on Twitter, and you're the big captain guy.
Put the crown on me head. No, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I did captain Mills last year, and he scored less than 60, so I know it can turn very quickly.
All right, let's go. Hawthorn, Brisbane. I got a few different bogs here. How good was it to see Hawthorn give it to one of the top teams in Brisbane?
Well, Brisbane, man.
Brisbane have got that hoodoo at the G.
They have the hoodoo, man. Like, they can't... Well, they struggled to win outside of the Gabba, but especially at the MCG.
Yeah.
And it was again on show with Hawthorn beating them. But there were some players that got the job done. Yeah,
we love an underdog, so I think that's why we like that. But then in terms of fantasy scoring, Dunks went and popped to 140. Would have been nice to have that as a little VC option. But and then Lockie Neal as well, who was a trade-in target for some people this week to go his highest score of the year.
Yeah,
I think.
bang, bang. So I think 14 marks on the day as well, which was always good to see. He was getting those little junk marks in the back 50.
That kind of thing's not sort of sustainable, but it looked as though he was there or thereabouts, which is good for that.
He had the positive matchup. Tougher matchup this week, but then a nice run as well after that. So
we've got some floggery from this one.
The floggery here is from a guy who scored really well, but just is making things very difficult for his owners, and that is James Sicily, the sick dog. Scored 130, as I said, but he's looking like he's facing another suspension and is going to be out for potentially 3+ weeks.
Imagine if you chose to hold.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah.
I mean, the logic was there. I could see... I think we said that we would be trading him when it was round 12. I think he was suspended. But, yeah, it is tough, because obviously he looks like a guy who's going to be a top 6 defender.
Oh, definitely.
Scoring excellent. But, yeah, it's obviously you can't hold someone who's out for 3 weeks plus his bye. So, that's a flog act there, James.
It's tough because, we obviously use the term flog in jest.
We're talking about fantasy, obviously.
We are talking
and obviously
in
the
jest.
headaches that it causes your fantasy owners. But, yeah.
But just from the perspective of that tackle, he really didn't do a great deal wrong. Maybe people will disagree, but it just didn't feel like there was too much, other than pushing him in the back after he had concussed him. that was a little malicious, but other than that, not much wrong.
Yeah, it's like there was another player involved, and it's so hard. I imagine,
tough.
You're trying to tackle a big, strong dude down to the ground, and it's what can you do really? So
now. Let's head down to Adelaide Oval, because the Texan in 250 has kicked 10, and I know he's not fantasy relevant at all.
But we've got to give a shout out to the man.
If you kick 10, and especially in a milestone game, then you well and truly deserve
166 fantasy points
on the bogs and flogs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to give a shout out. I tweeted this out, but
did you?
West Coast Eagles versus Adelaide again in round 24, the last round of fantasy.
VC.
VC, bang. Well, they don't have the times yet, so it could be a VC, could be a C, but could we see a repeat? I don't remember which year it was. The Jeremy Cameron
someone clutched
captain.
it.
I think it was the guy who was in second place, captain Jeremy Cameron on his last game to clutch the Coleman medal and goes on to win a car based on that move. That could be a very spicy little option, but
that's like a nothing to lose. Just go for it.
Yeah, we're thinking way down the line, but yeah, it just got me thinking and reminded me a bit of that. So yeah, big Texan. The flog for this award, for this game, goes to your mate, Jaden Hunt, just giving a big, middle finger bird to owners right before his bye on his way out. Just comes up and scores a 37.
That was like 11 at halftime.
Absolutely tanks his price just before you're about to trade him out. Some people might have traded him out this week, but a lot of people would have held just to trade him out at his bye round. But Jaden Hunt went, no, fuck you guys. I'm going to go and tank my price just before you do so and not contribute to your round 13 score and score a 37. So he's obviously a guy that you'd be now very comfortable trading out at his bye. All right, let's move on to the next one.
I actually don't think I need to say this bloke's name for the Bog for the Freo Richmond game. I'll let people out there, work out who it is, but I don't think it's even required.
Perma captain, highest averaging player of the game. Perma Bog, he's just a legend. I found it hard to pick a flog in this game. There wasn't too much floggery going on, but I'll give it to our mate Hayden Young just for old time's sake. Bit harsh in the wet. He did actually all right considering the conditions of the game, but 79 again, similar to Jake Lloyd. Some people would have traded him in. He only scored two more points better in a positive matchup. The weather didn't help him. I'm not super concerned, but it is disappointing from a scoring point of view for Hayden Young.
North Melbourne GWS, your boy Wardlaw. Oh my days.
Accountant, mate. This guy brings the numbers.
He is crunching the numbers every week now. But I think a slow second half. I think he was on 87 or something.
83 I want to say.
83, okay.
So we were expecting big things. 9 points in the third quarter, 15 in the fourth.
You're taking that from a rookie every day of the week.
Absolutely. He's going to shoot up in cash. It's going to be hard to say goodbye to him.
That's what I mean. If he keeps doing that consistently, how are we going to trade him out at round 15?
Yeah, well, he's got a great role, obviously. He doesn't look like a rookie. He's in there working hard.
Yeah, he's a beast.
Yeah, so we love Georgie Wardlaw. The flog for this game, look, I didn't want to give it to him, but on behalf of owners that do have him, Tom Green gets the flog award. Just didn't bring it in a positive matchup. He let down the Ball Boys, big boys. I think he was number 6 or something on that list, but 73 points. 1 mark, 2 tackles. This was the Tom Green that I was maybe thinking we'd see more of this season. We haven't, but it's not the time. Well, I mean, maybe it's not the worst round for him actually to kind of suck, but 73 points, his cash will start to come down now.
Over at Essendon Carlton, this wasn't a hugely high-scoring game. I think we actually only had one player that went over 100, Nick Martin. But the Bog for this one and people that were able to and in a position to pick this guy up a few weeks ago, we're very happy with his output in that Hobbsy.
Yeah.
So is he?
He looks good too.
Is he in the gun for you coming into his bye? Or
we'll talk about that later. But I do think he is. I know he's had a very good run. He's had a very good patch of form, and his scores have been nice. But I still think he's a touch below some of those top 6, top 8 premiums. So at his bye, I still think he is a guy that is on the trade block for me. Spoiler alert.
I can see why you've gone here with the flog.
Ed Kerno, what are you doing tagging, mate? And the tags, like we sort of say it, in jest a little bit, but also seriously that the tags have been kind of overstated this year, but they are still a threat, and we've seen what they can do to some of these players. Now, Merritt managed to save his score, but he wasn't looking good at the first half. Moved into a bit more of a forward role in the second half, and actually saved his score, like we said, kicked a goal, scored 97 in the end. But it is just a reminder out there that taggers can still come in and lock down our premiums at any given moment, and to not completely let your guard down.
The interesting thing too is even if the tagger doesn't necessarily lock down your premium, if they force a role change or they force a little stint forward, those are all opportunities where the player might not score what they would anticipate scoring. So it's like a little flag, but it's not one of those things you're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater, are you?
Yeah, for sure. And then just obviously reacting to the game that just happened before we started recording, Melbourne versus Collingwood, best on ground. Who have we got?
I've put Tommy Mitchell there, and this is interesting because for the last 2 weeks he's gone 120, I'm pretty sure. So
he has. Yes, he has.
But I don't, unless I've missed something, I don't think there's been a huge role change. I don't think there's been a massive game plan shift at Collingwood. Are these just 2 out-of-the-box scores, or is this a guy that we need to look at coming off his bye?
So he's had some positive matchups.
Yep.
So I think he had the combo of West Coast then North, or North then West Coast. Can't remember which. North then West Coast.
Yep.
So I think he's turned up in both those games. And then now that DeGoey is gone, who was getting the high CBAs for Collingwood, that's just kind of bumped up Tom Mitchell a little bit more. His time on ground has been over the 80% mark these last few games as well, where before it was sort of in the 70s. So I think he's going to maybe, whilst DeGoey is out, that might help him a little bit more, just get a bit more time in the middle. But I still don't think he's going to elevate himself to the Tom Mitchell of old. And I think that as soon as DeGoey does come back, it will kind of put a dampener on his score. But if you traded him in a couple of weeks ago where we were talking about him as a potential option, I think he is someone that you can hold through till after the buys.
Flog for that game that we just watched.
Flog, we're just gonna highlight the buy round scoring because you've got an interesting story about the Content Creators Cup matchup that came down to the wire for you.
I won by 6. I think. I mean, scores could update.
Double check.
I might be fucked, but I think I won by 6 points, and the poor bastard that I was playing clearly had a better team than me this week, and it's just because my fucking scores dropped off that I pipped him at the post. Junk Time Janitors over there.
Yeah, shout out to Junk Time Janitors, Alex from the
BEP, isn't it?
Yeah, from the Breaking podcast.
So sorry, mate, but it's the buy round scoring is I mean, you 18 score, but when you have a deep team like he did this week,
I think his fourth worst scorer was 91, and you had one fewer players than he did. You both had Dacos. He had Dacos and Brayshaw. And yet you've won the week and somehow because his highest scorer or his fourth lowest scorer was 91 and your fourth lowest score was like 70 something. So I don't know. It's hard to wrap your head around it.
The buy round scoring, if you're on the bloody wrong end of it, it can be the flog for the week.
And I'm trying to track my rank and see how I'm going. I'm like, am I doing well? Am I not? Like, I have no idea.
Up and down.
Yeah.
Now, segue to the Content Creators Cup because we forgot to shout out last week. So sorry. To Guesty and the guys over there at Infinite Wealth. But just a reminder to anyone who's been tracking that, Infinite Wealth, Guesty's company, is throwing some money at the competition. So the person who wins the competition will get to donate that money to charity.
Yep.
And in addition to that, they're offering a free money management
workshop of thing. Yeah,
if you're
I've actually started doing it. It's really good stuff.
And if
I
you're
definitely would recommend it.
If you're watching on YouTube, you can obviously see the information there on the screen. So follow that link there and go over and cash in on that because, like Mitch said, really
definitely worth your while and definitely lots of value in those sort of workshops that I'm going through right now. So
you're getting up to the top of the ladder, mate. You might be the guy donating the cash at the end.
There's still a long way to go. But I think me and Guesty right now are kind of taking turns. I think Sanch is in there as well, sort of the big three-headed snake at the top there. So
I might create a charity, and if you wouldn't mind, just flicking me some cash at the end of this.
Yeah, well, you got a bit of time. Hopefully, you make it look legit by now and the end of the season.
The Luke Rogerson fantasy charity.
Yeah, but no, fingers crossed. Hopefully, we can bring home and represent the Ball Boys.
Very nice. Should we talk some news from the weekend?
Let's do it. Relatively quiet news weekend, I think, compared to last week, but just a few minor things that we'll touch on. So obviously, Nick Blakey was concussed in that game way back on the Thursday night, so could potentially positively affect the Jake Lloyd owners who traded him in last week.
Yeah, that'd be a little silver lining
for
them.
Little bit of silver lining. It's probably only 1 week and Blakey will be back, but of course that means probably don't trade the man. We did see... It was interesting to note that Heaney and Papley moved to the CBAs for that game as well, with obviously Luke Parker and Callum Mills still not there. So the fact that a lot of those guys were gone and someone like an Errol Goulden still played a very wing/high half forward with a bit of CBAs in there, I just thought that was interesting to note. It probably also illustrates the fact that when a player like Callum Mills does come back, it's more than likely, I think, we eventually see him in the guts like we want him to be. So I just thought it was interesting to note that those forward players who have not really been in there all year went in there in a game like this.
Yeah, I don't think it means that anyone moves on Errol Goulden.
No, I don't.
At this stage.
Not now. Yeah.
Yeah, but worth noting.
Yeah, it is interesting. The next one here is probably going to hit a few coaches out there, and that is James Sicily suspension. I think he's been sent straight to the tribunal where he'll potentially face a 3+ week suspension. I think, obviously, they're going to... It might be different to that. We don't know exactly how long, but it is looking like he is going to miss some time regardless.
Yeah, I think...
the good news is, though, is he scored really well. He had a low break even going into this game, so his price is going to be north of like 930K, I think. Lockout, I don't think it's listed just yet, but he should be at a price where you can basically trade him into anyone, and I do think it probably is going to be a trade. Yeah,
the way they're assessing these ones this year, it's even if the intent wasn't there, it's still probably 2 at a minimum, I think, if they do some smooth talking. But now this one sucks for a few people that might have gone with a bit more of a speculative option this week. But Daniel Rich did the old man injury,
the old man calf,
and went the calf. So I think the boys over at the Traders might have a couple of them might have made this move.
Yeah, it's rotten luck. Look, on one hand, you could say, you're playing with fire with a little bit with Daniel Rich, but on the other hand, like he was cheap. He definitely was someone that was value coming off his buy. I could see the logic in it.
And you got to make moves at the end of the day, don't you?
That's right. So tough luck, and obviously he's going to be someone that we do need to trade and get him out of your side, and hopefully you can get him up to someone that is not going to hurt themselves week one and put some scores up for your team. So the next one here, I think, is also a very spicy and relevant piece of information that we need to be monitoring over the second half of the season. That is Harry Himmelberg. He's back in defense.
And
there's been some very, very positive quotes coming from the coach as well, to saying that they've experimented with him up forward, which, again, wasn't what they were saying at the start of the season, was it?
Experimented? He's played up forward for many years. What do you need to experiment with?
Yeah, that's the exact... I don't know. I don't get it myself, but they're saying that he's going to be down back. He's going to be staying down back. He's going to be a great player down back for them. So,
is he going to be waxing in that Kingsley system, do you think?
Well, that's the question. I think compared to some of the other GWS defenders, he did score pretty well. So if we use like the example of the Jason Johannesson move a few weeks ago when he had the role, but he scored poorly. But compared to the other defenders of the Bulldogs, that forecasted a sort of a good trajectory, a good projection for him. I think we can see a similar thing going on here for Harry Himmelberg.
91 followed by an 81, and he is just over 500K. So, I mean, even if he does that, he's still a value option.
Yeah, so, and if I look at the kick-in numbers here as well, he had 2 kick-ins, Lockie Whitfield had 4. So, Isaac coming into the side might muddle things up a little bit, but if you just look at his price, it is absolutely mouth-watering. So
round 15 bye, but so that means
you're not jumping this week.
It's after the bye.
You're not jumping this week. I think he's someone that you could potentially do something tricky after the bye rounds, but he's definitely someone that we need to watch. He's definitely a watch this week. I'm very interested to see how his scoring goes next week, and potentially someone we could jump on in round 16, downgrade and get another upgrade somewhere else. Very, very fascinating role change, and obviously one that was very relevant last season. A little bit different with a different coach now, but still one to watch.
Definitely keep your eyes on it. And the last piece of news that we have, we sort of mentioned it off the top as well, is the fact that Kerno went to Merit. Just something to keep your eyes on. Carlton take on the Suns next week. So
does he go to there?
Look,
Rao's been getting attention.
I don't know if he really does go to someone. I think Merritt was like a bit of a case out of the box this week.
He was a bit obvious.
Yeah, Merritt's been so... he's been killing teams with his foot skills.
It's been very, publicly
good,
announced that he's been on in a good patch of form.
So I wouldn't read too much into that one. But really, the Suns are not super fantasy relevant unless you're looking at maybe trading one in this week.
Potentially, which we very might well be looking at. All right, let's move on to...
Got your Kung Fu, buddy.
The next one here.
Hand on. Nice.
Kung Fu fighting. Okay, so chopping block, round 14. This is where things start to become a bit more cut and dry, I think.
Like sashimi.
Sushimi, cutting them out. All right, so we've got our round 14 by rookies, the guys that, you've probably been eyeing off a time to offload them now. So we'll go through a list. I'm sure I'll miss some, but Jacob Van Ruin, Weddle, Noah Long, Seamus Mitchell, Luke Pedlar, Cade Chandler. I'm sure I've missed someone else in there, but
there's some like fat rookies
There's
in
some
there
fat
too.
rookies
isn't
in
there?
there. So a lot of guys that have got a bunch of cash on their heads. So if you can get some of those guys out, as well as your round 14 mid prices, Jaden Hunt, Dom Sheed, Chase Jones, James Warple, and I am including Ben Hobbs. I think he is someone that we definitely can trade out, as good as he's been.
If he gets you where you want to go, then he's served his purpose, hasn't he?
I think so. And we have to remember that Darcy Parish is going to come back into this team probably after their bye, I would assume.
Yeah.
Setterfield might be back in there as well.
You could get a nice upgrade with a little combo of one of those rookies and Hobbs in there. And
so I think all of those guys can go. And, it looks like it shouldn't be too difficult, I don't think, to make a nice upgrade this week with a lot of those rookies and mid prices there as well. So
okay, and then talk to us about sort of red dots. How do you prioritise them this week?
So I'm tossing up whether or not this is a round where I can get rid of some red dots, because I can do like a Van Ruin down and a Hobbs up in 2. So I can do that and have a little bit of money left over.
Yep.
And then have a little bit of cash to make a move of a red dot rookie to some of these rookies, because we've got a few rookies putting their hands up now,
which is good. Just touch wood on that, because that hasn't been the case.
There's been a few. So again, lockout hasn't lifted yet, so I don't have the break-even data right in front of me, but it is potentially a round where if you've got some of those more expensive rookies or mid prices that you can get to your upgrade in 2 trades, that third trade you could potentially do a red dot fix up, because we know that round 15 and round 14, these 2 bye rounds are going to be the most challenging. So the more numbers we can have on these rounds, the better. And we will still need cash generation come the back half of the season when it comes to luxury trades and all these suspensions and things we're going to have to continue to dodge.
Well, that's it. Kind of segues into the next guy that we'll talk about. If you've got Sicily, you're obviously chopping him. He's getting the karate'd. And then you've got there Sheasel and Will Day potentially.
Yeah, so Sheasel is kind of like a follow-on conversation from last week. I think it's less of a play this week.
Because you've got one more week to wait, then just get him at.
Because you just got one more week now. He came out, I think he scored like a 92 or something like that.
Yeah. And if he can give you another one of those next week, then you trade him off at his bye, you cash in all that.
And you're more likely to need him this week, in the round 14 round versus the round we just had where you had the 22 players. So I think it's less of a play if you've still got him. I would just wait a week, and that's what I plan to do. Will Day is maybe a different story. I know some people were sort of, potentially we'll do a rolling 22 in a sec, but people don't see him as that top 6 defender. He's on his bye. There was a little bit of a shoulder scare early on in that game, but he came back and scored pretty decently afterwards.
I think that my way of thinking about Will Day would be if and I think most people will be in the boat, if you can use your downgrades and upgrades this week to get a genuine sort of mid-pricer like the guys like Hobbs, these guys, up to an out-and-out star, then you're not looking at Will Day. But if for whatever reason you maybe you're in a better position than a lot of people and you don't have any of those sort of mid prices, then maybe it's time for you to get a little cheeky luxury thing going where you get Day to, Doherty or whoever you think might be in the top 6 defenders.
Well, I wouldn't be going like a Doherty, but I'd be going someone like a Sinclair or something like
value.
that. Coming off their bye is the other thing as well.
Apologies,
there.
yeah.
But there is a world where I see it could working. I personally don't think that he's very high on my priorities. And I
think most people will be in that same boat.
I've just seen the conversation around Will Day being a trade. I think some people were trading him out last week. Some people might be looking to trade him out this week. I personally would be holding, and he's kind of a guy that you can fix up post the bye rounds.
Yeah.
Especially with some people like Sicily kind of out. He moves up closer to that sort of top 6 range. So we saw he can still score even when he's got a banged up shoulder.
So we've chopped a few people out. How about we put a few people in the crosshairs and talk about who we might be looking to trade in? Should we, before we talk? Actually, no, we'll just go with it. Sorry, I'm trying to throw you off here. But
you just do your own show there. Yeah. No, I think we'll talk the upgrade targets, but in reality, a lot of the same names that we talked about last week are going to be here as well, because I still believe that the process should be the same. I was listening to a lot of content and stuff out there. Some people sort of throwing some ideas about some big name players that if you don't have, like say a Dawson, if you don't have an English or something like those guys that haven't had their buys yet, is it okay to jump on those? And I was always I'd rather get a guy who's off their buy, even if they're not quite the best in their line. They're going to be playing one extra game than anyone who has their buy coming up. So I still think that the strategy is to get the players off their buys. I think if we start with the defenders, it's pretty cut and dry to me. You've got two guys that stand out head and shoulders above everyone for me. It's Jack Sinclair and it's Tom Stewart.
Yeah.
I think those two are probably the most safe and reliable options. I'm pretty sure Sinclair plays Richmond this week, so he's got a good matchup on the back of a 107 in a poor matchup. I think he is potentially the number one target for all teams this week. And Tom Stewart, most teams have him, but again, kind of like that top 6 defender coming off his bye. I think he's a good player to target as well.
Yeah, I agree with the fact that you said those top 2 and then Daylight. Like you've got Hayden Young and Luke Ryan on this list, but realistically, if you've already got Sinclair and you've got Stewart, look to target another line rather than going to Hayden Young and Luke Ryan.
Yeah, I think they're a bit too speculative, and the ceiling probably isn't there to justify the risk.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Which of those guys do you think is going to be averaging more for the rest of the year, Stewart or Sinclair?
It's a very, very good question. I have them projected at the same.
Okay.
I think Sinclair probably has the higher ceiling, with Stewart having the higher floor, if that makes sense. He's probably more consistent. Okay. Sinclair can pop off for big scores at any given week. So I potentially would back Sinclair in as the guy who averages a slight bit more, but it's very, very close, in my opinion.
Now, midfield targets, like you said, they're very similar to last week, but that's because we've only had 2 more teams come off their bye this week. So if you didn't bring in Lachie Neale last week, he's still a potential guy. Obviously, you would have liked to get that 124 against Hawthorn, but he's still, potentially a little bit underpriced for what we think he might be able to do for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think so. Again, without the lockout being lifted at time of recording, just refresh to make sure that is the case. I don't know exactly how much he's going to go up in price, but he will move up a little bit, probably closer price to that 100, maybe 101 mark now, which I still think can maybe be a little bit unders. The matchup this week is not as juicy, but like we've sort of highlighted in the past, after this week, he's got another really good run of 3 or 4 games. So I still think he's a good target. I want to use this list here that we've got here in front of us, Luke, to feed us into the next part of the show, which is our rolling 22. Okay. Because the forwards that we'll discuss later are pretty cut and dry as well. I don't think there's too much to discuss there. But with these midfielders in particular, I want to talk about who is in the top 8 and how would we rank them. So if we just take a step back again, going back into defense, I've come up with my rolling 22. Again, shout out to the traders who have dubbed this name.
They've coined that. I don't even have a fucking graphic for it. You spring this on me last minute.
I know, I've just thrown it to you.
Still says Ball Boys trade targets. No fucking...
Well, these are still trade targets, but obviously we want the ones coming off their bye. So
people are going to be like, what the fuck's Mitch doing? There's no rhyme nor reason
I'm
to the show.
I'm just taking over the show. But in defense, let's go through the top 6 defenders, in my opinion. You let me know if you have any disagreements. Okay. But at number 1, I've got... I'll probably put Jordan Dawson at number 1. Nick Dacos 2, Doherty 3, Sicily at 4. I think those are pretty cut and dry, in my opinion. At 5, I've got Sinclair and I've got Stewart at 6. Both of them kind of projected at a similar average as rounding out my top 6. There's a few guys that you could throw into the mix here. Caleb Daniel, who's quietly having a really good patch of form.
Yeah.
You could throw in Zeeble, Will Day, Hayden Young, and potentially a Harry Himmelberg into the mix as well. But I do kind of at this stage see Sinclair and Stewart being those 2 guys that round out the top 6. What are your thoughts? And do you disagree with any of them or disagree with the order I've got them in there?
I think so. I completely agree with the top 4.
Yep.
I think so. Dacos, Dawson, Doherty, and Sicily. And then Stewart and Sinclair I agree with, but would I be shocked if one of those other guys that you mentioned had a big run and maybe averaged a little bit more? Yeah. I wouldn't be shocked, but I think that you really can't go wrong with those 2.
Yeah, and I think, so like we sort of talked about, guys coming off their bye, of that top 6, the only guys available coming off their bye are Sinclair and Stewart, and then the only other guys that are close are Hayden Young, I've got there, and potentially a Luke Ryan if you're enthusiastic there, but I don't think that they quite make the top 6. So I think they're pretty cut and dry. The mids is where it does get interesting for me. So let's go through the top 8 that I've got here. I've got Clayton Oliver still at number 1 when he comes back.
Yep.
At number 2, I've got Rory Laird. Andrew Brayshaw, I have at 3. Merritt at 4. Bont at 5. Tom Green at 6. Caleb Sarong at 7. And Noah Anderson at 8. Now, you'll notice that I haven't mentioned a particular name there in Jack Steele, making my top 8. And this is where I wanted the discussion to go.
It'd be a brave person to put him in there the way his season started.
Because I think that he was the guy that I had pegged when I was sort of forecasting my trades through the buy rounds. I'd sort of gone, yep, Jack Steele's going to be the guy that I get in for round 14 because they come up against Richmond. He'll have a week after the buy for me to have a look. His price has a bit of chance to go down, but I'm nervous about doing it. Am I overthinking it, do you think, Luke? Like, what are your thoughts on Jack Steele, and what did you see? Because we watched that game a little bit together as well after we finished our recording.
Look, I don't disagree with your order there. The thing with Steele, and I've only played for a couple of years, so, the year before I started playing was the year where he, averaged 130 at the back half of the season.
Yeah, he was coming off a monster.
But I've heard a couple of other people say, Jack Steele at that price, is you just have to get on that. So I was really keen to do what you were saying and have a bit of a look at him this week, and then maybe with that high break even jump on him next week. Do you read into the second half scoring in the game that he played on, what would have been Thursday night? So his first half was putrid, but then I think he went 55 or 60.
It was that big third quarter as well. And you pointed this out when they came out straight away. You sort of identified there was a change in intent. They probably copped a spray at halftime from the coach.
But I felt like I was just watching Steele closely, and so watching that first half, if you get a chance, go back and watch the first 2 or 3 minutes of the second half. He looks like a guy who's just been
different. He
looked like a guy who'd just been given a revving, to be perfectly honest.
So he's the captain of the club. He's probably trying to come out and set the standard, right? And set the what we need to do to get back into this game, which I think they ended up winning, right? But he scored 21 points in the first half. So anyone who's capable of scoring 21 points in a half is someone that makes you nervous, despite how good they're going to go in the second half.
Because of his, there's every chance I trade him in this week, but because of his price, is it safe?
I think the risk is not super low. I think the risk is low because
the upside could be enormous. So
it definitely could be.
You do it then, don't you? And if it doesn't work, then you get to luxury season in 3 or 4 weeks, and you just correct.
I don't think it's a trade that if you trade in Jack Steele this week, he's got a positive matchup. He's got the history. He's a guy that doesn't need to accumulate the ball a shit ton because he tackles and he finds marks for the most part. But there's something stopping me going Jack Steele's the guy. Whereas a few weeks ago, I probably would have said, fuck yeah, you get him at 810K, go for it. That's an amazing trade. And I want to throw this stat to you because I've been researching Jack Steele extensively since that game.
I can tell, man.
And this stat caught my eyes. So St Kilda for the season so far this year, the number 1 scoring AFL fantasy team in the comp. Their midfield is number 14 in terms of scoring for the comp.
St Kilda.
So I don't think it's just his injury concerns. I think we also need to remember that it's a different coach for the Saints this year, and there's potentially something going on with the game plan because they're scoring a lot of fantasy points, St Kilda are, but it's not all happening in their midfield. Like, their midfield is only outscoring from a fantasy point of view North Melbourne, Geelong, West Coast, and Hawthorn. And you look at all of those teams, none of them have premium midfielders that we want in our side. So while St Kilda are winning as well, is there every chance that they start scoring fewer fantasy points if they're not winning as many games? To me, the combination of the concerns around his knee and the body and also the game style slight change has me leaning away from him being the guy that we expect him to be at the start of the season, even if he's healthy.
Is all that enough for you to spend an extra $100,000 to go to? Because I know the other guy that you're looking at is like a Sarong.
Yeah.
Is it all enough? Because, like I said before, there's like reasonably low risk and the potential huge reward.
Yeah.
Will you let your other trades kind of dictate where you go this week in terms of?
Look, I can get basically anyone in this week because of the fat and rookies and the mid prices. It's more about, do I want to keep myself a bit of cash for next week's upgrades, which I think I do. So it's something that I'm going to find hard to split hairs. At this stage right now, I'm leaning more towards paying up for some of those other guys because I think Steele might be potentially more popular and potentially has dare I say it, like a lower floor in terms of his scoring. Now, not lower floor compared to how he's priced, but that's starting to become less and less important now. And if you can get a guy who's a little bit more expensive now and is going to continue to stay at that price and perform well, then it might be hard for other players, people playing to get them in, and they might be stuck with a steal who's not performing the way that we would want him to. But it is an interesting discussion, and I've backflipped several times between Thursday night and today. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what his price ends up coming up, but I expect him to be priced under 100 this week. And if you could tell me that you get Jack Steele priced under 100 at the start of the season, I'd fucking jump at it.
Well, I mean, you bought him priced at whatever he was at the start of the season. So. The only other one that I'm not sure on your rolling 22 there is Noah Anderson at 8. I think that maybe Petrarca might have him covered.
That's funny. He's the guy I'm thinking of targeting this week, coming off his bye round.
Well, should we talk about him? Because I'm sure there'll be a few people that
so obviously he might be the forgotten man. Obviously, he had a good stretch there a few weeks after, obviously, Tuke went down. He's had a season-high score of 159 this year. He's just a guy that I think is in the CBAs at a high rate. He is someone that has inside and outside game. He's a guy that I believe if they're going to tag some of the Gold Coast, the way it's been going recently, they're going to go to Raoul.
Yeah.
I think he's probably a little bit more damaging, a little bit more pivotal to their success than a player like Noah Anderson. And I just think that he's probably the safer guy, despite only averaging 103 so far this season. I think he has room to improve on that in the back half of the season. So that's where I'm leaning there, but I'm not by no means extremely confident in it.
I guess he's one of those guys. He's going to be there or thereabouts, isn't he? Like he's going to be close enough to that top 8 mids that you're not going to get completely burnt by owning him. Well, what do you? Because you said he had that big run there, but then he's had a run. Barring his most recent score, he had a run of sort of 80s. What do you put that kind of thing down?
So you got tags against West Coast.
Yeah,
scored 86.
That's ridiculous.
79 versus Brisbane is the worrying game. That's the game that's probably the most concerning. But then the 2 games after that was in the Northern Territory where they were playing with a bar of soap. And I think I've seen some stats where the Gold Coast scoring for the season versus Gold Coast scoring as a team at Northern Territory was dramatically lower. So a lot fewer marks to go around, and they were chipping the ball a little bit for the Gold Coast Suns. So I think his scoring will reflect more positively, outside of that kind of a venue.
And that's good information because you've spoken to me about this before. Is you want to try and be the coach that picks up this player before they then go on that good run and everyone else is playing catch up. So inexplicably started the season poorly, but then some people might have jumped on but got the big score, and this could be another case of those. You can kind of justify a few of those low scores. Maybe jumping on now is the right thing to do, and you. Yeah,
and I'm looking at his run here. Look, it's not incredible. It's not the worst. He comes up against Carlton, Hawthorn, Collingwood, Port, St Kilda in his next 5. So Collingwood and Port obviously tougher matchups. The other 3 are, I would say, good positive matchups. In that 5, he's got 3 of them at home as well. So, look, I would say slightly positive run, but nothing super crazy. But I do think that, obviously we talked about all those round 12 bye guys last week. I think throwing Noah Anderson into the mix there, sort of in that price between like a Lachie Neale and a Caleb Sarong, he's kind of like a good middleman of both those boys. So I do think he is going to be a good option. I'll come with you on Friday with my definitive rankings.
Okay.
Of those sort of midfielders, because I think that will be the big question for this week. But we'll flag all of them as options at the moment. Should we round out the rest of the rolling 22?
Yeah, well, you put it in here, mate. You may as well finish it.
Okay. Ruck's pretty easy. Tim English, Rowan Marshall. I don't think we need
What about Briggsy?
Briggsy, mate, he's looking good though. I tell you, I think he can maybe average 95,
Holmesy was frothing him this week. I actually just got a message from Holmesy. It says, "I'm back, baby."
Well, he's had a big round. So,
bloody good on him too.
Cheer on the great man. He deserves a big round after his troubling season so far.
He's been stitched, but hopefully he's on the charge.
The forwards are another tough round, a tough position to do my top 6. Number 1, I've got Timmy T. Number 2, Josh Dunkley. Number 3, I've got Zach Butters. The next kind of 4 or 5 I find really tough. So I've got Cogs at 4, Rosie at 5. I've got McRae at 6.
Wee.
and Errol Goulden just missing out at 7 with your likes of Darcy Cameron, Bailey Smith, and a smoky Ben Keys also in the mix there as well. So is this just me and the fact that I trade out Errol Goulden, not putting him in my top 6 as a little bias there, or what are your thoughts?
No, I don't think so. When you get to 5 and 6 in the forward and defensive lines, like you throw a blanket over a few of the guys there, don't you? So it could be Errol, could be McRae. Yeah, I mean, Goulden's got that. He's shown that enormous ceiling. So if he punches out a couple more of those, that's really going to inflate his average, isn't it? But yeah, like if you think about it, prior to those two big 160s, he was kind of going in there around the 85 to 95 in that kind of bracket, and he's pumped out a couple more of those in the last couple of weeks. So sometimes those big 160s catches everyone's eyes, but overall he's kind of just been ticking away at that kind of 95. So
as it stands right now, Errol Goulden is averaging 104.6 and Jack McRae is averaging 100.2. So as good as Errol's been and as poor as McRae's been in our eyes,
it's not that far off.
They're like 4 points difference.
And if you take away the two Goulden 160s, what's he averaging there?
Yeah, probably fewer than 100, I'd say. But obviously you can't take that away because he can do it. But yeah,
you manipulate the stats to just make it
just to suit your argument.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let us know what your thoughts on our rolling 22 there, guys. And if you disagree, I'm sure there will be some disagreements there. But
we probably need to think of a different name. It's probably copyright there over at the Traders, isn't it?
Yeah, go listen to the Traders, guys. They're a good podcast. So
we're shouting out to make up for the fact that we stole their content. I don't think they're going to be happy with that.
Straight up stole it, didn't we?
No, we'll workshop a different name.
Yeah, we should do that. Probably should have flagged that before I threw it in there. But that will finish that one off there. Anything else that we need to cover today? I think
we're all good. I mean, given the fact that it's still lockout still hasn't lifted, we don't have a great deal of certainty around break evens and talking about those kind of things. So join us on the Friday for a little bit more detail on that. And if you want to hit us up at any point during the week, message Mitch on Twitter.
No, message the Oxshorts, mate. You're flying up the rankings.
Yeah, mate. Not top 1,000, but so.
Hey, long season to go, guys. But yeah, thank you very much for listening and watching over on YouTube. So give the video a big thumbs up. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you're feeling super generous, give us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to. And we will see you guys on Friday for another live show for some beers. Catches.